Tomorrow, the country will commemorate Human Rights Day. In March 1960, the Shopville community embarked on a march to protest against past laws. Apartheid police shot and killed 69 protesters. The tragedy came to be known as the Sharpeville Massacre. The Democratic government declared March 21 Human Rights Day to commemorate and honor all those who fought for our liberation and the rights we enjoy today. Well, 25 years into democracy, are the youth of the country experiencing the freedom that was fought for? To help us unpack this, I'm joined by three youth who were born in the 90s, Tokollo Matsabu, Tirath, Bhoola, and Sophie, Harbour. Good evening to all three of you, and thanks very much for coming through. Now, for the oldies, this day has a very sort of special place in their hearts given the events that happened in Shopville. And as I said in the intro, the new government after 1994 felt that perhaps the best way to commemorate this day is to declare it the National Day for Human Rights. What does that mean for you, or what is your understanding of what tomorrow actually means?
So for me, it's basically the kind of ability to self-actualize, and that refers to right of access to education, right to healthcare, and all of that. Because I do think the way that South Africa views human rights is different from back then versus now, because back then it was about the basic fundamentals of justice, of freedom of association, of being free, and now it's more about the fundamentals of how we can actually reach our potential.
Tirath?
I feel it's a very good way to commemorate such a day because it allows us, in a society that is so bogged down with what life is at the moment, you know, where it be like we're studying or we're working, you know, we can take a day out from that and invite your neighbors over for a braai and then actually commemorate what the sacrifice was made so that you could enjoy a day off in your work week to sit alongside your neighbor and discuss, you know, the matters in the country at the moment, granted you have power.
Sophie?
Yeah, obviously I think commemorating that kind of day, those kind of struggles that brought us to where we are today is super important for just recognizing what a position we are in today and how lucky we are to be where we are. But also I hope that it to me reminds us that we still have a lot to do, that there's still so many disconnects and struggles that we need to kind of keep pushing for.
Where are those disconnects, if I may ask?
Well, I think sometimes human rights can, in my opinion, seems to sometimes happen at a level that's so removed from our everyday, especially for certain people. So I think bringing it down to a level where we maybe even moving it away from legal domain and rights and just thinking about what kind of morals and values human rights represent for us, and then trying to bring that into our everyday actions in our social relations, building more caring social relations and things like that.
I guess, Tirath, this is for that reason that you feel perhaps in more informal settings where, as you suggested, you can invite, you know, your neighbors for a braai and have this conversation is where it should be happening and not up there, you know, at conferences and symposiums and so on.
Yeah, don't forget what the day is about. You know, it's not just a day off to people in like the world or to people in South Africa rather, but it is a day to commemorate human rights. That, you know, I have the freedom to go where I choose to, you know, to partake in a day where you can look at the history of this country with an open-minded individual, you know, across from a table and sit down and reason. And then if you affect a change in that conversation, you can go out and affect a change in the rest of the conversations you have for the rest of that day. And it's good that we talk about it in the symposiums, and it's good that we talk about it on this forum here, because it shows a level of understanding amongst our society and culture today.
Well, interestingly, I mean, the same issues you were alluding to are the very issues that the Human Rights Commission has actually flagged. And I mean, when you look at instances like, children who not only learn under trees, but who have no access to proper toilets, some of whom, as you would, know, have actually died in pit latrines over the past, few years.
So I do think that when it comes to human rights, there's also an encompassing sort of responsibility that comes with it too, because it's a very unifying concept, because we're all human, we all have the same rights, and therefore if you have the ability to affect change, you actually have the responsibility to affect change, because we are all part of an Ubuntu, a unifying concept. So, I do think that South Africa's track record when it comes to human rights isn't the best, especially when it comes to, as you say, education standards and healthcare as well. Our healthcare system is pretty much in shambles at the moment, and not everyone has access to adequate healthcare. So, yeah, I feel like we do have a long way to go in terms of the practical applications of human rights, and not just the airy-fairy, lovely ideals of human rights.
Well, it's interesting she says that, Tirath, isn't it, that on the one hand we don't have one of the best track records, yet by the accounts of many people across the world, we have one of the best constitutions that there can be.
Yeah, but it's the age-old theory versus practice. We've acknowledged our past and the sacrifices that have been made, and we've put them down into the Constitution, but how many South Africans nowadays, as I said, are living the Constitution out? What is it to anyone in the street to be a South African? And tomorrow, it's a day to think about that. What is, not even just as a South African, what is your right as a human? And as she said, the responsibility to other humans to treat them with respect and aid them where you can. If you're being taught under a tree, unfortunately, it is the situation in some of this country. But if you have time off tomorrow, go and read a book to a child under a tree. It'll have the same impact and sort of nurture them the same way that this country still needs to be nurtured up, so that we can grow into a sort of, out of a developing nation into a first world country.
But what is your personal experience, though, Sophie? Born but 25 years ago, forgetting for a second what people have said, whether it's about what tomorrow means, or whether it's about life in general. Do you consider yourself to have been fortunate, or to have lived a life that is worse than what your parents and grandparents went through?
Well, obviously, not at all. I think I'm extremely privileged. Obviously, partly because of the colour of my skin, because of the education that I was lucky enough to receive. For so many reasons, I feel extremely privileged. So I've been lucky enough to never have to come into contact with human rights in the way that I'm fighting for food, because it's my basic human right and I don't have access to it already. So I think in that way, I don't know what it feels like to really want to claim a human right and have to go through the legal processes of claiming a human right. And I think, obviously, so I can't kind of comment on that, but when I think about human rights, I hope that I think more about duties as well, because I haven't had the opportunity to think about what it means to claim a right, a basic need. I think about the duties that I would have to other human beings to try and bring about a better foundation for human rights to flourish in general.
Tokollo, how has your life been like, and how do you feel about it?
Well, I've had to think about human rights for a long time in my life, not because I didn't have access to education or all that kind of stuff. I've been very fortunate that my parents were able to provide those things for me, but I remember when I was a young age and my parents sat me down and they were like, I think I was 11, and they were like, we need to talk about race, because one day you might actually be judged or undervalued for just by the color of your skin, and you're not going to know how to deal with that because you've been raised in a very sheltered environment where everything is either it's colorblind and we don't believe like racism exists and all that kind of stuff. So and also on the gender aspect as well. And I think I am young, but eventually when I do go into the working world, I may kind of start having to navigate those spaces where people are discriminating against you based on, or assuming things about you based on being a woman and being black.
Tirath, is race an issue for you?
The first time I encountered race being a born or race just standing out as an issue for me was the first time I did enter the working world. And on the first set that I worked on, one of my colleagues of mine pulled me aside on the first day and says, okay, work hard, but don't forget that you will be judged by the color of your skin. And I looked at him in shock and awe, because that's not the way I think. So it was difficult for me to comprehend what he was saying. Also because I knew the people that I surrounded myself with don't think like that either. So it may have been his personal experience that was reflecting on, like, that was projecting onto me. But as an issue, it comes onto an identity issue. People ask me, are you Indian? And I tell them, no, I'm South African. I'm 100% South African. My closest ancestors to India came on the boats. So, it's something that we've preached as a rainbow nation, and I think we've kind of forgotten about along the way. We've had a lot of big moments in our modern history, post-94, that kind of sort of, I don't want to say downplayed what happened, but caused the rest of the youth of this nation, or at least the younger generations, to sort of forget what happened. And they're only being taught about it in school and then coming home and not really interacting with that anymore. Maybe, hopefully, with like all the load shedding, it'll bring everyone together and take away a basic need that everyone needs.
Sophie, is race an issue for you?
I think I come across it, so I studied politics, so in the conversations that I was always a part of course it's a major issue, and I think the country is still extremely divided. I think we've faced so many social crises in South Africa that come back down to those dividing lines, whether it be race or class or any kind of dividing line. And I think as important as human rights are, I hope people aren't overwhelmed by the concept and then kind of dismiss it or not think about it, because it's such a massive human rights is such a massive topic to even start to think about. So I hope to kind of fix those social divides, people think about it, how they can just enact better social relationships in their everyday life, and instead of being overwhelmed by human rights and how they can correct for human rights, focusing on those small social relationships. And then if we can have the difficult conversations around social divides, we can slowly start to address those bigger issues.
Well, the way our system works, tomorrow you're going to have the president of the country having a rally somewhere where he's going to speak to the nation on this important day. 10 seconds, 2 or maybe 3 important things you would want him to say on such an important day, given where we are as a country today.
I definitely think he needs to talk about equal opportunity. I think he needs to try and quell the tensions that are arising through because we have a lot of class divisions as well, and we need to be more of a united front. And yeah, I think that's about it.
Beyond what he says, what would you like him to do, Tirath?
I think stop placating the people with small laws and small little trinkets to make South Africa feel like it's doing okay, and actually address some of the bigger issues like we have, like education and healthcare and poverty and the class divide.
And what would you like to see him, what for you will be the proof that he actually leaves and does what he will be saying tomorrow?
The proof? In kind of his actions or in what he says? I would hope that the proof would be if he can actually encourage people to get involved, to be a part of the difficult conversations, to try and get rid of those tensions, not get rid of, but deal with the tensions that we're all struggling with. And I think the proof will be if it motivates people to actually get involved. I think that for me would be proof that he's done a good job.
That's where we're going to leave it. Thanks to all 3 of you for agreeing to come through this evening. Tokollo Matsabu, Tirath, Bhoola, and Sophie Harbour.